Welcome back to Science Exposed, the show where we take a deep dive into all those fascinating scientific topics you never knew you wanted to know about.
Right.
And we're really lucky to have Dr. Cameron Jones on our side.
Yeah, curating all these topics for us.
He always finds the most intriguing stuff.
Speaking of intriguing.
Today's deep dive might make you think twice before you grab your next beer.
What's wrong with beer?
Well, we're going to be talking about something called Ochratoxin A.
Okay.
OTA for short.
Yeah.
It's a potential health risk that might be lurking in your favorite brew.
And it's a global issue, this OTA contamination.
Oh, really?
You might be surprised to learn just how widespread it is.
Yeah, like how widespread are we talking?
Well, there was a study that found a 100% prevalence of OTA in beer from countries like Armenia, the Netherlands, and the UK.
100%.
100%.
So you're telling me there's a good chance I've already consumed beer with this OTA in it?
It's definitely possible.
Wow. Okay, well, before I swear off beer forever, let's break this down a little bit.
Okay.
What exactly is Ochratoxin A? It sounds kind of ominous.
Yeah, it's a mycotoxin, which is a type of toxin produced by certain fungi.
Oh, okay.
The main culprits here are Aspergillus and Penicillium.
Those are some big words.
They are.
So these fungi, they love to grow on grains, right? Particularly barley and wheat.
Exactly.
Sound familiar?
Ringing any bells.
Yeah, barley. The main ingredient in beer.
Exactly.
So is that where the contamination starts? Like out in the fields where the barley is growing?
That's exactly where it starts.
Okay.
Picture a barley field.
Okay, got it.
Warm, humid. It's the perfect breeding ground for these fungi.
Yeah.
They can actually infect the barley while it's still growing,
Oh, wow.
meaning the contamination is already present.
So it starts even earlier than I thought.
Much earlier. And it doesn't stop there.
Oh, no.
It's a multi-stage process. Think of it like an obstacle course for OTA.
Okay.
Starts in the field, then moves on to harvesting and storage.
Right.
If the barley isn't dried and stored properly,
Uh-oh.
those fungi have a field day.
Yeah.
They thrive in those warm, moist conditions.
So even after the barley is harvested, there are still opportunities for things to go wrong.
Many opportunities.
So it's like a chain reaction.
Very much so.
Oh.
And then we come to the malting process.
Okay.
This is where things get really interesting.
All right.
During malting, the barley is intentionally germinated and then dried.
Okay.
It's an essential part of making beer,
Right.
but it also creates the ideal environment for those pesky fungi.
Oh, no.
If hygiene and environmental controls aren't meticulous, the contamination can increase even further.
So every step in a way, it's like another hurdle for this OTA to get over.
Exactly.
But even after all this, even if some OTA has managed to stick around, isn't the brewing process itself pretty intense?
You would think?
I mean, with all the boiling and fermenting, wouldn't that kill off any remaining toxins?
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But OTA is a tough little molecule.
Oh, great.
It's heat stable.
What does that mean?
It means it can withstand high temperatures. While some OTA might break down during brewing,
Right.
a portion can actually survive the entire process
Oh, no.
and end up in your beer glass.
So even after all that effort, we're still left with OTA in our beer.
It's possible.
How common is this problem, really?
Well, that's where the global study we mentioned earlier comes in.
Okay.
They found that over 50% of beers tested had detectable levels of OTA.
Over 50%.
Over 50%. And the levels weren't consistent across the board. Some regions had significantly higher levels than others.
Oh, like which ones?
South Africa, for example, topped the list, followed by Slovakia and Portugal.
South Africa, huh? Well, their wine is world-renowned.
Right.
Do they have the same problem with OTA contamination in grapes?
That's a great question.
Or is it something specific to barley?
It speaks to the complexity of this issue.
Yeah.
While OTA contamination is a concern for various agricultural products, certain crops, like barley, are simply more susceptible to it.
I see.
The climate in South Africa, with its warm and humid conditions, certainly plays a role in the higher OTA levels in their barley crops.
Okay. So it's a combination of factors.
Yeah.
The type of crop, the climate, and even the way the barley is handled after it's harvested.
A lot goes into it.
So knowing that OTA is present in over half the beers out there, how much of a risk are we really talking about here?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. Scientists have developed a specific way to measure the potential risk, called the target hazard quotient.
The what?
Target hazard quotient, or THQ.
Okay, THQ.
Got it. Think of it as a risk score.
Okay.
The THQ helps us understand if the amount of OTA in beer is actually a cause for concern.
So how does the THQ score for beer look around the world? Are we all in the danger zone?
Thankfully, no. But there are some regions where the THQ is definitely raising red flags.
Like those same countries we talked about before.
Some of them. The study found that the THQ was above the acceptable level in South Africa and Slovakia,
Oh, wow.
indicating that beer consumption in those regions could pose a potential health risk.
Okay, that makes sense. They have the highest OTA levels. What about the rest of the world?
Well, other countries showed lower THQ scores.
What?
But here's the thing.
Hey.
Even if a country has a low overall THQ, it doesn't necessarily mean everyone there is in the clear.
Oh, I see.
You have to remember that individual risk can vary based on a whole bunch of factors, like dietary habits, how much beer you drink, and even other environmental factors.
So even if the overall risk is low, it doesn't mean we can just ignore it completely.
Exactly.
More nuanced than that.
It is.
Okay, this is getting really interesting, but before we get too deep into the weeds here, let's talk about why we should even be concerned about OTA in the first place.
Sure.
What are the potential health consequences?
Well, that's a crucial point, and I think it's something we should dive into after a quick message.
Great idea. And don't forget, listeners, we're brought to you by the brilliant mind of Dr. Cameron Jones, who always seems to find the most captivating scientific mysteries for us to explore. We'll be back in a flash to uncover the potential dangers of OTA. And in the meantime, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Science Exposed for more fascinating deep dives. Check out the show notes for more ways to connect with us.
So OTA, it's particularly notorious for its impact on the kidneys.
The kidneys.
Yeah, in fact, studies have linked it to a chronic kidney disease
Oh, wow.
called Balkan endemic nephropathy.
Balkan endemic nephropathy.
And it's a mouthful.
It is?
It's been observed in certain regions of southeastern Europe,
Okay.
where OTA contamination in food staples has historically been quite high.
So we're talking chronic kidney disease here, not just like a temporary thing.
That's right, chronic kidney disease.
Wow.
While the exact link between OTA and Balkan endemic nephropathy is still being investigated,
Okay.
there's compelling evidence to suggest that OTA plays a significant role.
So it's not just like a mild stomach upset or something.
No.
We're talking long-term damage.
Unfortunately, yes.
Wow.
And that's why it's so important to understand the risks
Yeah.
and to take steps to mitigate them.
You mentioned studies linking OTA to kidney disease.
Right.
Are there any specific cases or stories that illustrate just how harmful this toxin can be?
There have been a number of studies looking at populations with high exposure to OTA.
Okay.
And the results are, well, they're pretty concerning.
Like what?
Well, for example, one study in Bulgaria found a direct correlation between OTA levels and blood samples and the incidence of kidney damage.
Oh, wow.
The higher the OTA levels,
Yeah.
the more severe the kidney problems.
Wow, that's a pretty clear link.
It is.
It makes you wonder how many cases of kidney problems around the world could be attributed to OTA exposure,
All right.
even if people aren't aware of it.
Exactly.
Are there any other health risks we should be aware of?
Yes, there are. OTA is also classified as a possible human carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer.
Hold on, cancer too.
I know.
That's unsettling.
It is a bit unsettling.
How does OTA contribute to cancer development?
Well, studies have shown that OTA can damage DNA,
Okay.
which is, as you know, a crucial step in the development of cancer.
Right.
Essentially, OTA can cause mutations in our cells,
Right.
and those mutations can sometimes lead to uncontrolled cell growth.
Which is what we know as cancer.
Exactly.
So not only is this stuff potentially damaging our kidneys,
Yeah.
it could also be increasing our risk of cancer.
It's a lot to think about.
It's starting to sound like we should all be avoiding beer altogether.
Now, hold on a minute.
Okay.
It's important to remember that the levels of OTA in most beers are relatively low, and many countries have regulations in place to limit contamination.
Okay. Yeah.
The key is to be informed and make smart choices.
Okay.
It's not about giving up beer entirely,
Right.
but about understanding the risks and making informed decisions.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better.
Good.
So if I'm not ready to give up my favorite beverage just yet, what can I, as a consumer, do to minimize my risk?
Well, one of the simplest things you can do is be mindful of where your beer comes from.
Okay.
If you're concerned about OTA, you might want to choose beers from countries with stricter regulations
Okay.
and a good track record of food safety.
That's a great tip. Are there any other red flags to watch out for? Like, is there any way to tell just by looking at a beer whether it contains OTA?
You're talking about like the color or something?
Yeah. Does it affect the taste or appearance at all?
Unfortunately, no.
Really?
OTA doesn't have a noticeable effects on the taste, smell, or appearance of beer.
So you can't rely on your senses to detect it.
You can't, no.
So how are we supposed to know which beers are safe? It feels like a bit of a guessing game.
It can be tricky, but the best approach is to do a little research. Look into the breweries, check their websites, see if they have any information about their quality control processes
Okay.
or testing for contaminants like OTA.
So it's about being proactive and informed, not just grabbing any random beer off the shelf.
Exactly.
It's amazing how much goes on behind the scenes to ensure the safety of something we often take for granted,
Right.
like a simple beer.
A simple beer.
Knowing how widespread this problem is, what's being done to actually reduce the presence of OTA in our beer?
Well, there are a lot of different approaches being implemented,
Okay.
and they target different points in the production process.
Okay.
It starts with agriculture.
So back to the fields where it all begins.
That's exactly.
So back to the fields where it all begins.
Exactly. Farmers are implementing better practices to minimize fungal growth in barley crops.
Like what kind of practices?
Well, this includes things like crop rotation, which helps disrupt the life cycle of those fungi.
Okay.
Proper fertilization is also key, as it strengthens the barley plants and makes them less susceptible to infection. And some farmers are even starting to use resistant barley varieties that are naturally less prone to fungal growth.
So it's about building a strong foundation from the very beginning.
Right.
If we can prevent the contamination from happening in the first place, that's a huge win.
Huge win.
But what about the barley that's already been harvested? What can be done to protect it from those pesky fungi?
That's where proper drying and storage come in.
Okay.
Once the barley is harvested, it's crucial to dry it quickly and efficiently to reduce the moisture content.
Right.
Fungi love moist environments, so by keeping things dry, we can significantly inhibit their growth.
Makes sense.
And then there's storage.
Okay.
Proper ventilation, temperature control, and regular monitoring are all essential for preventing fungal growth in stored barley.
It's fascinating how even seemingly small details can make a big difference in this fight against OTA.
Absolutely. Every little bit counts.
Are there any other steps being taken to address this issue?
Absolutely.
Like what?
Well, the malting process, which we discussed earlier, is another critical point of intervention.
Okay.
Maltsters are implementing stricter quality control measures to ensure that only high-quality barley, free from fungal contamination, is used for brewing.
Right.
This includes screening the barley for visual signs of fungal growth, cleaning it thoroughly to remove any dust or debris that could harbor fungi, and even using specialized equipment to control temperature and humidity during germination and drying.
So it sounds like a multi-pronged approach is really necessary to tackle this issue effectively.
It really is. You have to hit it from all angles.
But we haven't even talked about the brewing process itself yet.
Right.
Are brewers doing anything to minimize OTA contamination?
They certainly are, yeah.
Like what?
Some breweries are implementing advanced filtration techniques that can actually remove OTA from the beer before it's bottled.
Wow.
These filters are designed to trap the OTA molecules while allowing the rest of the beer components to pass through.
So they're specifically targeting those OTA molecules.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow, that's impressive.
It's pretty cool.
It's great to hear that the brewing industry is taking this seriously and investing in solutions.
They are.
Are there any other strategies brewers are using?
Yes, there's also a growing trend towards using alternative grains for brewing, such as oats or rice.
Interesting.
These grains are naturally less susceptible to OTA contamination than barley,
I see.
so they offer a safer alternative.
So there are options beyond barley for those who are really concerned about OTA.
Exactly. You've got options.
That's good to know. But you mentioned some really exciting new technologies earlier.
Right.
Like artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things.
Yeah.
How are those being used to combat OTA contamination?
That's where things get really futuristic.
Okay.
We're seeing the emergence of smart agriculture systems that use sensors and data analytics to monitor crop health, predict disease outbreaks, and even optimize harvesting and storage conditions. So it's about using technology to make the entire process more efficient and less prone to contamination.
Exactly. Working smarter, not harder.
Can you give me a specific example of how this works?
Here, imagine a system that uses sensors to constantly monitor the moisture levels and temperature in a barley field.
Okay.
If the sensors detect conditions that are favorable for fungal growth,
Yeah.
they can alert farmers immediately so they can take action.
Wow.
like adjusting irrigation or applying preventative treatments.
So they can catch it before it becomes a big problem.
Exactly. It's all about early detection.
That's incredible. It's like having a 247 watchdog for your crops.
It is. It's like a high-tech guardian.
And what about the Internet of Things? How's that being used?
The Internet of Things is being used to track and trace barley shipments throughout the supply chain, from the farm to the malting facility to the brewery.
So following it every step of the way.
Exactly. By monitoring the barley's journey, we can identify potential points of contamination
I see.
and improve accountability. It's all about creating a more transparent and traceable system to ensure the safety of our food.
So we're not just improving individual processes,
Right.
but creating a more integrated and intelligent system.
It's all connected.
It's truly remarkable how technology is transforming the way we think about food safety.
It really is.
And it gives me hope that we can overcome this challenge and enjoy our favorite beverages without worrying about hidden dangers.
I agree. I'm optimistic about the future.
This has been an incredibly insightful journey into the world of OTA contamination.
It has.
We've learned about the sources of the problem, the potential health risks, and the incredible efforts being made to address this issue.
A lot of great information.
And it highlights the importance of staying informed and engaged as consumers.
Absolutely.
We have the power to make choices that support food safety and sustainability.
We do.
Well, this has been a truly enlightening deep dive into the world of OTA contamination.
Yeah.
I think we've all learned a lot today about the hidden dangers lurking in our food, the complexities of food production, and the incredible efforts being made to address these issues.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion.
And remember, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
By understanding the risks and the solutions, we can all make more informed choices about the food we consume and contribute to a safer and healthier world.
Well said.
Okay, everyone, that's it for today's episode of Science Exposed.
Thanks for listening.
Before we sign off, a huge thank you to Dr. Cameron Jones for curating these fascinating topics for us.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Jones.
And to our listeners, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the show, and check out the show notes for more information on OTA contamination and the resources we mentioned today.
Lots of great information in the show notes.
Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the fascinating world of science.
We'll see you on the next Science Exposed.